Okay, good evening. I appreciate those of you that are joining us via YouTube and Facebook. And so this is part 2 in our Healthy Living lecture series, and tonight's title is Counterintuitive Strategies to Drastically Improve Your Health. And a subtitle for this could be Don't Eat, Get Hot, Get Cold, Take Off Your Shoes, Don't Breathe, and Expose Your Kids to Crud. And so I'm going to explain why all those things are going to help contribute to health. And the first thing that I want you to understand is that when we are comfortable, at least in our modern day and age, it usually leads to bad health. So for example, I think everybody knows that you should be exercising regularly in order to have good health. It's much more comfortable to sit on your couch than it is to lift 100 pounds. It's more comfortable to sit in a recliner and relax than sprint. And so our ancestors didn't have to exercise because they were working outdoors, typically for a living, or hunting, or gathering, or farming. And so in our modern world, where most everyone lives a sedentary lifestyle, we have to force our bodies to move and do things in order to get stronger. Otherwise, if we're not moving, if we're not using our muscles in our heart, we get weaker. So I think everybody can understand that principle. And so the theme of our talk tonight is to be uncomfortable and to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. And so going back to the example of exercise, also in our modern world, most everyone, at least in developed nations, doesn't have a problem with not having enough food. We have too much food, and there's health consequences that come from that. And so our ancestors were working to make themselves more comfortable. They were working to have food, shelter, and clothing, so that they could be safe and provide for themselves and seek comfort. So in the modern world, we actually need to do things to make us uncomfortable because we're so comfortable that it leads to ill health. And so our body is incredible because when we have stress, physical types of stress, our body responds by getting stronger. Unlike a machine, that the more stress you put on it, the faster it wears out. And so our body will respond to stress in a way that makes us stronger, makes us better, decreases our risk for disease, and helps us live longer and live a healthier life longer. Again, we're going back to exercise. Exercise helps us have stronger muscles, a stronger heart, stronger lungs. It increases our immune system, and it's actually one of the #1 things we can do to stimulate our brain to help prevent degenerative diseases like Alzheimer's disease. Also, exercise strengthens our bones in addition to our muscles. And so we're going to talk about very simple things you can do to put stress on your body in a good way that's going to help your body respond by getting stronger. And so one of those is related to our body temperature. So most people in the modern world, they never have to work to maintain their body temperature. They're in a controlled environment like this room where the temperature is set and they don't have to do anything to work to achieve that. I mean, how many of us listening to this, when was the last time when you were dripping with sweat? When was the last time you were shivering to heat yourself up? Our body has these internal mechanisms that help us maintain our temperature that most people in the world never ever have to use unless maybe they're exercising and sweating quite a bit. And just like when you don't exercise, if you don't have to work to control your body temperature, you get weaker. There's all sorts of negative things that happen. We're going to talk about positive benefits that come from heat and cold therapy. In fact, when you lose the ability to regulate your body temperature, that is when you die. When you assume room temperature, you're dead. And so we're going to talk about general things, and then there's a concept that I want you to understand. It's called cellular stress. So just like muscles, when we put stress on them, they respond by getting stronger. Our cells are the exact same way. When we stress them in some sort of form, they respond by getting stronger. Again, we'll talk about how heat and cold and other things can do that. But just like a muscle can get stronger, our cells get stronger to where when they have stressful things that happen in the future, they respond better, they heal faster, and we have less negative consequences. And again, we'll dive into that in just a moment. And so first I want to talk about the benefits of heat therapy. And then we're going to talk about using a sauna, although it doesn't have to be a sauna. It could be just simply taking a really hot bath. There are benefits to that. And a lot of these benefits come from exercise as well. When we exercise, we have very similar benefits to using a sauna. And part of that is because our body heats up internally. And so what I'm going to get a lot of my information from is a study from experimental gerontology that was from August 5th, 2021. If you're interested, you can look that up and read through the study. And so the benefits of sauna include decreasing heart disease. That happens because it increases the function and strength of our left ventricle, decreases cholesterol, decreases LDLs, decreases heart rate, decreases atherosclerosis, increases plasma volume, increases cardiac output, increases arterial compliance, increases endothelial function, that's the lining of our blood vessels, and it decreases peripheral artery disease. And so just like exercise makes your heart stronger, when we are hot, our heart rate increases. As it increases, that happens to help us to sweat. So we also vasodilate the blood vessels in our arms and legs and other parts of our body so that sweat can be released and we can cool ourselves off. So vasodilation is the blood vessels actually get wider. And so if you never ever sweat or get hot, then you don't exercise your blood vessels, just like you don't exercise your heart. And we'll talk about cold more later, but cold does the opposite. So if there's vasoconstriction, blood vessels get smaller, and that gets the blood away from our arms or legs and into our core so that we can keep our core warm and stay alive. And so I mentioned about it increases arterial compliance and endothelial function, and that's a lot of what we're referring to as just you're literally exercising your blood vessels to expand and contract. And again, if you never get hot or cold, you never do that. And so other benefits of, I wanted to mention that studies show that people who do the sauna the most regularly can decrease the risk of heart disease by up to 63%. And so that's dose dependent, meaning the more you do it, the more of a benefit you get. And the people who got the most benefit did the sauna between 4 and 7 times per week. Also, blood pressure can decrease by up to 46%, and again, it's dose dependent. The more you do it, the more of a benefit you get. The sauna is also great for the brain, and so when we vasodilate, we get more blood flow to places, including our brain. It also stimulates something called BDNF, which is brain-derived neurotrophic factor. That actually stimulates brain cells to be healthy. It stimulates new neural connections. That's something called neuroplasticity. There's also the possibility it stimulates new brain cells to develop, which is called neurogenesis. Studies show that sauna and heat therapy can increase learning. It can increase cognition, and it improves memory. It can also decrease the risk of Alzheimer's disease by up to 66%. And again, that's dose dependent. The more you do it, the more benefit you get. It also can decrease psychiatric disorders by 77%, and that would include serious disorders like schizophrenia. It can also decrease anxiety, decrease depression. It increases endorphins, which helps us feel good, so that's probably the reason why you get the mood benefits. And it also helps decrease pain. It also can help us to heal faster after an injury. So this kind of sounds awful, but they've done studies with mice where they drop a weight on their head to dent their skull and damage their brain. Well, what they've shown is that mice that have been conditioned by doing the sauna previous to the injury, they actually heal faster than mice that don't. In fact, the mice that don't, the brain doesn't heal. And so there are also studies that show that sauna use can improve chronic fatigue syndrome. It can also help us detox heavy metals. So things that we collect in our body, for example, aluminum, cobalt, cadmium, and lead, all of those things get out of our bodies by a rate of 4 to 25 times faster through our sweat when we use the sauna. And by the way, if you're using deodorant that has aluminum in it to clog your pores, you should stop putting aluminum into your body, which does increase risk for Alzheimer's significantly. Also, there are body-wide changes that happen when we expose our body to heat. And so it stimulates our body to heal faster. There are proteins, they're called heat shock proteins, and they go through and they repair your body faster, specifically proteins. And so proteins, when they are repaired or when they're damaged, or if we have more of these heat shock proteins, we don't get damaged in the first place, it helps us to age more slowly. So this is why the sauna can help you have healthier skin, look younger, age more slowly, because you literally repair proteins faster than if you are not using a sauna. There's other anti-aging benefits. The sauna helps our body to create antioxidants. By the way, oxidation is what happens when metal rusts. So if you've seen metal on a car rusting, that's oxidation. Whenever we breathe in oxygen, it oxidizes us. It basically makes us rust from the inside out. And so when we use the sauna, it trains our body to be better at producing antioxidants, so that's another way that we age more slowly. It also protects us from diseases. Oxidation is a large part of heart disease and cancer, and just about every disease process causes our body to break down. Also, sauna use stimulates growth hormone, and growth hormone is anti-aging because it helps us repair tissues faster, it helps keep bone and muscle stronger, and it helps us recover from exercise faster, and it's one of the additional anti-aging benefits. Let's see. Also, sauna use decreases inflammation. Inflammation causes pain. Inflammation causes just about every disease process in our body to happen faster or be worse. And so again, it can lower the risk of heart disease, cancer, just about every disease there is by decreasing inflammation. In fact, sauna use is sometimes used in cancer treatments for that reason. And so all of these different things the sauna does leads to increased longevity. There are studies that show the more you use it, the longer you live compared to people that don't. It also increases something called our health span. And our health span is a really neat concept. In other words, what that means, it's not necessarily how long you live, but it's how long you live healthy. I don't think anybody wants to live a long time and spend the last 15 years in a nursing home, not being able to do anything or remember who they are. And so sauna use not only increases how long we live, it increases our health span, or how long we are healthy for. One neat thing it does, it also improves athletic performance. And so one study showed that it increases the mitochondria in our cells by 28%. Mitochondria are parts of our cells that produce energy. So if you produce more energy, you're going to have obviously more energy in general, but also specifically in exercise. Studies show that sauna use increases endurance in endurance athletes, that would be running, cycling, swimming, those kinds of things. It also, as I mentioned, improves growth hormone, which has benefits with performance as well, and then obviously it strengthens your heart, as we've discussed, and that improves athletic performance. And then it also improves something called heart rate variability, and heart rate variability is how much our heart speeds up or slows down. And that actually happens all the time. Every time you take a breath in, your heart rate speeds up. Every time you take a breath out, your heart rate slows down. And the greater our heart rate variability, it means the more adaptable our brain and our body is, specifically our nervous system. And the more adaptable we are, the more healthy we're going to be, the more we're going to be able to handle physical, mental, and emotional stress, and also the longer we live. So just like if you can't regulate your body temperature, you're going to die. If you can't regulate your heart rate, then you are going to die. So the last step before your heart starts beating is it just beats at one pace all the time, and it can't slow down or speed up. And so heart rate variability is a very good indicator of just overall health, and sauna use increases heart rate variability. And just to be a little more specific on that, so our sympathetic nervous system, if you're familiar with that, people think of that as our stress mode. When we breathe in, it stimulates our sympathetic nervous system. As we breathe out, our body relaxes, stimulates what's called a parasympathetic nervous system, which is sometimes called rest or digest mode. And so we're in this constant balance of our sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system, like a wave going up and down. And that is very good and very healthy. Again, if you can't modulate that, if you're, let's say, in sympathetic stress all the time, your heart rate's really high all the time, that's really bad. If your heart rate's really low all the time, and let's say you get up and if you feel lightheaded because you can't get your heart rate up fast enough to keep blood in your brain, having your heart rate too low is bad. So our body needs to be able to change our heart rate within milliseconds. And again, the way we measure that is called heart rate variability. And so another neat thing about sauna use is it preserves muscle mass, and that's important for aging. As we age, we tend to lose muscle mass. Even if we do exercise, sauna use can prevent that. And interestingly, they've done studies with people that have an injury that can't exercise, and doing the sauna actually helps preserve muscle mass. And again, part of that's due to growth hormone, like we talked about before. I mentioned this idea of the cellular stress response, that at a cellular level, when we put our cells under stress, they learn to get stronger, or our body can respond better to future stresses, which is why when people have an injury, they heal faster if they've already been doing the sauna. And I mentioned that study of mice, but there are other studies, that are not mice and not the brain. So it's applicable to everything. in general, as we use the sauna, because of all these health benefits, we have less disease, or if we have a disease, it has the potential to heal, or at least heal faster or slow the disease progress. I forgot to mention with exercise performance, sauna use also increases our aerobic capacity. The measurement for that is called a VO2 max. It also increases heat tolerance, and heat is actually the #1 reason why we stop exercising. Or like if you're running, for example, it's not the outside heat, it's your internal heat that makes you stop exercising. Or even lifting weights. When your muscles get too hot to get internally, you stop lifting weights. You can't do more because of heat. Again, sauna improves that. It also improves speed and endurance. Now, there are some warnings with sauna use, or just hot tubs or a hot bath, because you can get some of the same benefits from that. Kids should not be doing it. They don't have a good way to regulate their body temperature properly like adults do, so they can overheat, which could lead to death. Pregnant women should be careful doing it. You'd have to get your body temperature quite high to cause problems with the fetus, but you need to be careful with that. Anyone who's had a recent stroke or recent heart attack should probably not be doing the sauna. And there's several other conditions. Also, if you have a fever, don't do a sauna then. And please talk with your medical doctor, especially if you're on blood pressure medications, you've had heart conditions or anything like that. Talk with your medical doctor before you start using a sauna, and please be careful. And so, I've mentioned about heat therapy. Now, cold therapy, as I said, does vasoconstriction, so your blood vessels get smaller. And other benefits to cold therapy is it decreases inflammation. That can also decrease pain. It also stimulates adrenaline, which we'll talk more about in just a second. And there are some data that suggest that it might be helpful for mood disorders like depression and anxiety. And so there's a man from the Netherlands. His name is Wim Hof. And he has developed a technique using cold therapy and breathing therapy that we're going to talk about. And so this gentleman, Wim Hof, takes ice baths every single day. He recommends that. You can start out by just simply at the end of your shower, turning the water down a bit so it's cold and feels uncomfortable. He recommends progressing to where you can take a shower that's completely cold, no hot water at all, and then you can progress to cold baths. One thing I like that he says is to never force it. So this does not mean you have to force yourself to be miserable, but you can ease into it and train your body to do that, which we'll discuss in just another moment. He also has a breathing technique I'll demonstrate in just a moment, which is pretty amazing. So this breathing technique, you breathe in rapidly, which increases the oxygen in your body, and then you hold your breath. And then as you hold your breath, your body will use up the oxygen that's in it, and you will produce extra carbon dioxide. And then at some point, obviously, you're going to have to breathe out that carbon dioxide and breathe back in. What happens when you breathe in, as we've discussed, is your sympathetic nervous system kicks in. As you hold your breath, heart rate goes down, parasympathetic nervous system kicks in. And so this increases heart rate variability, which, again, we talked about how that increases health in all sorts of different ways. Also, as we do this type of breath work, not only does it stimulate adrenaline, it stimulates endocannabinoids and endorphins, which are chemicals in our bodies that help us to feel good, similar to like a runner's high. It also stimulates growth hormone. We've talked about benefits of that. It stimulates the immune system. Immediately after doing this breathing technique, you get an increase in white blood cells. White blood cells help you fight infections. When you do this technique, initially you get a rise in cortisol. Most people tend to think of cortisol as bad. That's not necessarily true. Cortisol is released when we have stress, but in the short term, cortisol is good. It helps us have energy. It helps us actually fight infections. Long-term cortisol is really, really bad, which we're not going to discuss. But in doing this breathing technique, short-term cortisol increases, but then long-term it decreases, just like you ramp up your body breathing in, and then you breathe out and hold your breath, and your sympathetic nervous system takes over your body and calms down. Doing this technique also has been shown to decrease inflammation. Again, that can help decrease pain, lower risk of just about every disease there is, and that's specifically through a chemical in our body called interleukin-10. And so I'll give you an example of this breathing technique. This gentleman, Wim Hof, they did a study with him where they injected him with endotoxin from E. coli, which normally would make someone very sick. They would have a fever, chills, GI discomfort, possibly vomiting, things like that. So they injected him with this endotoxin from the bacteria. He did his breathing technique, had zero symptoms at all. So then they wanted to study if it was just him or if this was going to be applied to other people. Within 1 week, he taught other people this technique. They injected these people with this endotoxin. Some of them had 0 symptoms, some of them had very, very mild symptoms, whereas again, the average person would feel very, very sick for hours, as I've described. So it stimulates our nervous system, or excuse me, the immune system in a way to fight off infection. And the amazing thing is also stimulates our immune system to not overreact, which is what autoimmune disorders are, is when our autoimmune system overreacts to things. And we'll talk about a little bit more about conditions that can help with that. With the cold therapy, there's a couple other things I forgot to mention. It also stimulates mitochondria production. Again, that's the part of our cells that produces energy. It also stimulates something in our body called brown fat. Brown fat helps us mobilize white fat, which is the fat most people have right here. So it helps us lose weight when we're cold because we burn fat to stay warm. It also is good for our cardiovascular system, like we described. It's exercise for your blood vessels to contract in this case. And then I already mentioned how it decreases pain and inflammation. It also increases our cellular stress response, just like I talked about with heat therapy. If you expose your body to the cold, literally at the cellular level, your cells become better able to adapt to harsh conditions. So if you have an injury, you get less injured, you heal faster. It also can handle or increase our ability to handle emotional and mental stress because you are forcing yourself to do something that's uncomfortable. If you only get to do things you enjoy in life that are pleasant, you're probably not going to be very emotionally resilient either. And so he's been teaching this technique for many years now. And there was a study done where they did a survey of people who'd been doing this technique for over a year, and they had over 3,200 people respond. And these are the most common things that it helped with. So just general things that helped with. People listed resistance to cold was number 1, then increased energy, increased mood, increased mental focus, increased general health. Maybe most people don't care about resistance to cold, but I would think every human being would want increased energy, improved mood, improved mental focus, and increased general health. And then when they asked about specific conditions that people saw improvements with, the top 5 things that people listed were number 1, depression, and then back pain, insomnia, arthritis, and chronic pain. And then the responses that they got also showed a significant help with allergies, asthma, post-traumatic stress disorder, digestive problems, and anxiety. So let me just mention one thing about anxiety and with the cold therapy. So you don't force somebody else to do this, you voluntarily do this yourself. If you put someone else against their will in an ice bath, it's a very unpleasant experience. If you do this for yourself, going into it with the attitude that you're doing something that's hard on your body in order to get stronger, it helps you get stronger. If you don't have that kind of an attitude, it can reinforce that it was a really negative experience. You'll never want to do it again. So again, start out with something that's easy, don't force it, and then over time it will become easier as your body becomes stronger. And so we've talked about heat, we've talked about cold. Next we're going to talk about not eating. So I've spent a lot of time working with patients talking about eating healthy, but we're actually going to talk about how not eating is beneficial. There's many benefits to fasting. One thing I want you to understand is that your stomach has a volume sensor, and so when your stomach is empty, then you have stomach pains or it growls because that's signaling it's empty, and it will make you think you need to eat. Now, if you have extra fat on you, you don't need to eat. It just means your stomach's empty. Fat is storage of calories that we can use to burn later. And so if you have extra fat on you, you don't need to eat. It just means your stomach is empty. So you could drink some water to tell your stomach, here's some stuff to help you feel full. And obviously water doesn't have calories. And so in fasting, the main thing that it does, it helps our body burn fat instead of carbohydrates. And that is called metabolic switching. We stop from burning carbs. Carbs we go through very quickly, which is why if you're just eating mostly carbohydrate diets, after a few hours of not eating, you're going to feel super hungry and you have to eat again. Whereas fats, they burn more slowly, and so you can go for a much longer time feeling fine if your body is used to burning fats. And again, the process of stopping to live off carbohydrates and burn fat for your fuel is called metabolic switching, and fasting accomplishes that. Fasting has many benefits. They're anti-aging, similar to using the sauna. And so, for example, again, it stimulates growth hormone, which improves muscle strength, bone strength, helps us repair from injuries faster, we age slower. It improves the number of mitochondria, which helps us have more energy, as we mentioned. It actually stimulates stress-resistant genes, which again, at the cellular level, is going to help our cells be stronger. It actually helps us repair proteins, similar to how the sauna does. It helps us recycle proteins. It helps us repair our DNA. It also helps us repair other molecules. So all of those things help us age slower, and they lower our risk for lots of diseases, including cancer, which we'll talk about in just a moment. Just like the sauna, fasting increases our lifespan, increases our health span, and it increases our heart rate variability, which again is how well our heart and nervous system can adapt to our surroundings. And so it also stimulates this brain-derived neurotrophic factor that I mentioned before, which stimulates new brain development. Better to say neuroplasticity or new connections, which improves learning, improves memory, improves cognition, just like the sauna. It decreases our risk of Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, having a stroke, having seizures, and it also stimulates a neurotransmitter that's referred to as GABA, which can help decrease anxiety. And just like the sauna, it decreases our risk for heart disease. It decreases blood pressure, decreases heart rate, decreases cholesterol, decreases triglycerides, decreases the hardening of our arteries, which is atherosclerosis. It has been shown to help with asthma, multiple sclerosis, arthritis. And then, obviously, if we're eating too much food, we not only gain weight and become obese, but that also increases our risk of becoming a type 2 diabetic. So if we just stop eating, we stop putting calories in, obviously it's going to lower our risk of becoming type 2 diabetic. It decreases insulin resistance. And the studies they've done on that have shown significant improvements with doing what's called a 4-3 fast. In other words, you eat 4 days a week and you fast 3 days a week. If a person is wanting to just lose fat around their belly, abdominal fat, one study showed great results with that with doing a 5-2 fast week. 5 days a week, you fast for 2 days a week. And by the way, when we eat carbohydrates, that stimulates our body to produce insulin. Insulin tells our body to take those carbohydrates and store it up as extra fat, which tends to want to store around our abdomen. So if you have extra abdominal fat, that means you've been eating too many carbohydrates, you have too much insulin, and one of the best cures for that is to just stop eating. Your insulin will go down and you'll burn that fat. And if you've been doing cold therapy, you'll burn it faster because, again, you burn the fat for fuel to stay warm. Back to cancer. So cancer is too much growth or growth in the wrong places. When we eat protein and carbohydrates, it stimulates growth. There are hormones and chemicals that stimulate related growth. Too much growth is cancer. So one of the best ways to try and prevent cancer is to eat less or fast. And so, in fact, fasting has been used as a treatment for cancer patients. One doctor that I follow recommends that if you have cancer, you basically fast as often as you possibly can handle it to give your body a chance to heal. Fasting also helps our digestive system be healthy. It helps the microbiome, which is all the good bacteria that live in our gut, to be healthier, and that can lower your risk for developing or decrease symptoms for things like irritable bowel syndrome, ulcerative colitis. That also impacts mood disorders and autoimmune disorders. Fasting has been shown to increase athletic performance by increasing endurance. It also helps increase balance and coordination, and it helps us heal faster from surgery, which I thought was pretty amazing. You know, I think of people in the hospital and they've had some sort of surgery and, oh, you need to eat so your body can heal. One study showed that if people fast for 3 days before a surgery, they heal faster than people that don't. Or you can similarly just decrease calories for 2 weeks and get very similar results. In fact, one of the best things you can do after a brain injury or concussion is to not eat, and you will heal much faster. Also nerve injuries. They've done studies with animals where they cut their nerves, and then ones that were fasting before they had the nerve injury heal faster than the ones that are just eating. And so because fasting increases this cellular stress response that we have, it makes our cells stronger, that if we do have any kind of an injury, like a heart attack, you have less damage to your heart and you heal faster. So it's protective for our heart, our brain, our liver, and our kidneys specifically. And so I would recommend it, at the very least, starting by just eating less or for a less amount of time during the day. So I would recommend every single person go 12 hours between eating. So if you stop eating dinner at 7 p.m., don't eat breakfast till 7 a.m. the next day. So breakfast is you're breaking your fast. So it should be at least 10 hours, 12 hours even better, 14 hours even better. And probably a lot of you are familiar with intermittent fasting where you go maybe 18 hours between eating and you just eat within a 6-hour window every day. And so when we do that, when we get to about between 14 and 18, but closer to 18 hours, our body starts doing this healing process. That healing process is called autophagy. So think of it this way. If you have a car, can you repair your car while you're driving it? And obviously you can't. Same thing with your body. If you're constantly putting calories in it, then it's in growth mode and fat storage mode, which is not equivalent to healing mode. You just don't heal as well. When you finally stop eating and give your body a break, it can heal stuff that it doesn't have a chance to otherwise. And again, the name for that is called autophagy, where we recycle proteins and repair proteins and get rid of cells we don't need and all those kinds of things. And again, that happens between 14 and 18 hours. 18 hours is even better. Now, if you're doing a longer fast, these benefits of growth hormone and autophagy, they get better and better the longer you do it, up to about 72 hours. After 72 hours, the increase in these things is not as much. Even after 48 hours, it's not as much. You still get a lot of the benefits, just not as much. And so I've got a study that, again, I've got most of this information on that you could look this up for yourself if you'd like, and they have a nice chart I'll reference. This was from the New England Journal of Medicine in December 26, 2019. So the authors of this study, they recommend that you just start out going for 1 month where you have a 10-hour feeding period, which would mean you go 14 hours between breakfast and or dinner and breakfast the next day, and you do that 5 days a week. And they recommend that the next month you have an 8-hour feeding period 5 days a week. The next month you have a 6-hour feeding period 5 days a week. And then in month 4 you have a 6-hour feeding period 7 days per week. So you had to go 18 hours between your meals, and then you can eat hopefully healthy food. During those 6 hours you don't want to be eating a ton of carbohydrates, telling your body just to store up fat again when you've been trying to burn that fat. And so with fasting, just like with Lasani, please talk to your medical doctor, especially if you're a type 2 diabetic, especially if you have other health conditions where fasting would not be good for you. And if you are a diabetic, you're going to have to watch your medications really closely and all that. So we don't want anyone fasting to the point where they're getting lightheaded and passing out and things like that. So please be smart, be careful, and don't overdo it. When you start out fasting, obviously you're going to have an increase in hunger because you're used to every time you feel hungry, you put something into it. Once you stop giving your body that signal, you'll eventually be fine fasting. You'll probably be a little irritable because you're used to having carbohydrates all the time to give you energy. I think most everybody knows you can get a quick burst of energy by eating sugar. And so when you stop doing that initially, you are going to feel irritable, you're going to have a decrease in concentration. But if you give it, at the longest, it should take a month to where you could fast and actually feel really good. So as I've been experimenting with this, I'm to the point now where I can go 24 hours, and then, when I wake up in the morning, I feel hungry, and after a few hours, I feel fine. I'm actually quite shocked how well I feel later on in the day and how much more energy that I feel. And last month I did, I didn't do a total fast, but I basically had 1 or maybe 2 meals a day for 5 days in a row, and I was actually shocked, like on day 4, how good I felt not eating and how much energy I felt. So anyways, as you work on it, it gets easier. It won't be too hard, and the benefits are really amazing. And so last, we're going to very quickly talk about something called grounding. Second to last. And so you probably are familiar with electronic devices or electric devices that they have a grounding wire that when you plug it into the wall of your home, it grounds. Your home is grounded. And so our bodies are electric, the earth is electric, in fact the atmosphere is electric. That's why we have lightning. It's an electrical discharge from the atmosphere down to the earth. And so there are benefits actually just by having our body connect to the earth. And so that's called grounding, or it's called earthing. And so there are studies that show, and hopefully I can find this paper. So there are studies that show that it decreases blood pressure, it decreases anxiety, decreases inflammation, decreases pain, and I think I somehow left that paper home because there were more benefits. Anyways, there were 20 studies to it that showed significant benefits. Improved energy was one of them. And so I recommend at least 15 minutes a day you're in contact with the earth. It could be as simple as you take off your shoes, go outside, put your feet on, not concrete, not asphalt, not wood, but dirt, rock, grass, things like that. And then the last one is related to kids. And so if we don't give our body a reason to get stronger, it gets weaker, and that's true for our immune system. So believe it or not, kids who are the sickest when they're young tend to be the healthiest when they're older. Kids who are exposed to dirt and germs and poop and animals and insects have stronger immune systems than kids that don't. They are sick less. And so it might seem counterintuitive. We want our kids to be healthy, and unfortunately with COVID, we've gone overboard with sanitizing everything in the world, and which will lead to a whole bunch of kids being sicker as adults, well, sicker as kids, sicker as adults, and having more allergies. In fact, kids who are exposed to animals when they're young are less likely to have allergies to animals as they get older. Kids who are exposed to different foods when they're younger tend to have less food allergies when they get older. And so for our body, and especially our immune system to work properly, we need to be exposed to things. We need to have things that force it to get stronger. And when we extra sanitize everything, it makes us weaker, and especially kids. They need to be exposed to germs in order to get stronger. And so I want to go back to the example I used about the car. And so in your car, are your brakes bad or are they good? And is your accelerator, is it good or is it bad? Well, obviously it's really neither, right? It depends on what you're doing. So if you need to slow down, the brakes are really good. But if you need to slow down, the accelerator is really bad. And if you want to go somewhere, the accelerator is really good. And if you want to go somewhere and your foot's on the brake, well, that's really bad. So here's my point. With all of this stuff, the heat, the cold, breath holds, which I need to demonstrate still, and intermittent fasting, too much can be a bad thing, right? Obviously, you can starve to death if you stop eating. You can get hyperthermia or hypothermia, and you can die from cold or heat exposure. And so don't overdo it. Be smart, be careful. You want to use these tools to stress your body to a point where it helps you get stronger, and not to the point where it hurts you in the long run. So be smart. If you need extra help or guidance, please consult your medical doctor. You can consult us as well. If you're interested in using a sauna, we have one at our office. A couple of resources for you. You could go to wimhofmethod.com. It's WIMHOF method.com. And you can sign up for a free mini class where basically Wim sends you an email. He has 3 videos. It's going to teach you everything you need to know about his technique. If you want more than that, you can sign up for it. I've been doing it myself almost every day since April. I think it's pretty amazing. One note on that about how it stimulates growth hormone. There are no studies on this, but I've read plenty of anecdotes of people who their athletic performance improves by training less and doing the Wim Hof method. So it's pretty amazing how it affects our hormones and how that can change our bodies. There was a book written by a man named Scott Carney called What Doesn't Kill Us, and it's all about Wim Hof and his method and how this was developed. And again, the point is, what doesn't kill us makes us stronger. Great book, very interesting read. My only reservation is there's a few pages with some awful language, so you've been warned if you choose to read that. I don't endorse that part of the book. And so if you have any questions, you can leave it in our comment section on this video. You can call our office or email us. And again, the point is that if you don't give your body a reason to get stronger, it's going to get weaker. And so we need to exercise our muscles and our body, but we also need to exercise our capacity to be hot, to be cold, to be hungry, to be exposed to germs. And then as we connect to the earth, it can help us heal. So thank you for tuning in, and we have our next talk coming up November 10th about sleep, and then December 8th about increased energy. And again, you can watch it live on Facebook, or you can just watch it anytime afterwards. It'll be permanently recorded on Facebook. And if you've watched this video, please do me a favor and just hit the like button so we have an idea of how many people have watched it. And thank you.